This happened when I was 26, back when I lived alone and worked night shifts at a small petrol station on the edge of town. And most nights were quiet enough that nothing ever happened, which is probably why I didn't realize how exposed I actually was. The day didn't start with fear, but it did start wrong because when I walked out to my car before leaving for work, I noticed something printed under my windshield wiper. And when I picked it up, my stomach dropped. It was a photo of me. Working the night shift at the petrol station, taken from outside through the front window, close enough to clearly see my face, like someone had been standing there watching me while I had no idea. There was no note, no message, nothing written on it, just the photo. And I stood there for a few seconds, trying to convince myself it was a prank, even though I knew it wasn't random because no one accidentally takes a photo like that. But I was tired, already late, and didn't want to panic before work, so I threw it away and left. That night started like any other. It was a Tuesday, a little after 1 in the morning. Dead quiet, no customers, no cars, just the hum of the lights and the refrigerators behind the counter. I was alone, scrolling on my phone, when I noticed movement outside near the pumps. At first, I thought someone had pulled in slowly, but then I realized the figure wasn't moving toward the entrance at all, just standing there at the edge of the forecourt, completely still, like it was waiting. When I looked closer, my chest tightened because the person was dressed as a clown. A full costume, oversized shoes, baggy suit, gloves, wig, and a painted face that didn't look silly or exaggerated. Just neat and controlled, with dark eyes and a smile that didn't change. I watched, waiting for him to do something normal, but instead, he started pacing slowly across the forecourt, not toward the door, just back and forth. And then he lifted his head and waved at me through the glass, slow and deliberate, like he wanted to see if I would react. I didn't wave back. After a few seconds, he turned and walked along the side of the building and disappeared from view. And that's when my stomach really started to twist, because he didn't leave. He went around the station. Honestly, I was scared, and I had no idea what this guy was doing, where he'd gone, or if he was coming back. And that bad feeling wouldn't leave me, because it was the first time in my life I'd ever felt fear like that. I remember thinking, what kind of psycho is this? Is he messing with me, or is he actually crazy? Is he here to hurt me, or did I just get unlucky and cross paths with the wrong person at the wrong time? A few seconds later, I heard a short electronic beep from the back of the building. The kind of sound you only hear when someone touches the staff door. And my blood went cold because that door wasn't for customers. It opened into the storage room, and behind that was nothing but trees. I hadn't heard the door open. Just that beep, like someone testing it, checking what would happen, and that scared me more than if he had just forced it. I locked the front door without thinking, and when the back door sensor beeped again, stronger this time, I knew he was still there and doing it on purpose. I moved to the security monitor and looked at the back camera, and even through the grainy black and white footage, I saw him. Standing right in front of the back door, completely still, staring straight into the camera like he knew exactly where it was. The truth is, I was so paralyzed that I'm not even sure I remember everything perfectly. But in that moment, I know he didn't rush, and he didn't try to break in right away. Instead, he reached into the oversized pocket of the costume and pulled out a kitchen knife. And not gonna lie, I honestly thought I was going to throw up. Then he pressed the knife slowly against the metal of the door and dragged it downward with steady pressure. And the sound vibrated through the wall deep and rough, like he wanted me to hear every single second of it. I backed away, barely able to hold my phone. And then he started tapping on the door. Slow taps, a pause, then tapping again. Not trying to get in yet, just letting me know he was there. I ran into the manager's office, locked the door, pressed the panic button, and for a moment, everything went completely quiet. I called my manager. No answer. Then I called the police and kept my voice low, even though I knew he probably already knew exactly where I was. The dispatcher told me they were sending a patrol. Then the back door alarm sounded again. Longer this time, and I heard the latch give, followed by movement inside the storage room. Slow and careful, not rushing, like he had all the time in the world. I was in shock. I'm a grown man, but all I could think was that this wasn't random. This wasn't a joke, and whoever this was knew exactly what he was doing. Then I heard it. Soft humming. Close. Like he didn't care whether I heard him or not. I didn't know what to do. I had no gun, no protection, nothing. I was alone. My adrenaline was out of control, and all I could do was pray he wouldn't come inside. I didn't even know if he was alone or if there were others out there with him. My head was a mess. Honestly, I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone. The office doorknob turned slowly, testing the lock, and then he laughed. And in that moment, I knew this was never about money or the station. He knocked again, slow and deliberate, and I realized I had no idea what he wanted from me. Whether he meant to torture me, kill me, or just see how far he could push me. I stayed completely silent, barely breathing, and a few minutes later, I finally heard sirens outside, and everything changed at once. Because the humming stopped, footsteps rushed away, and the back door slammed shut. The police found me locked in the office, shaking, barely able to talk. They never found him, but they watched the security footage. And when I told them about the photo from earlier that day, it finally made sense why none of this felt random. He hadn't taken any money, hadn't touched the register, and hadn't stolen anything at all because he wasn't there for the station. He was there for me. I quit 2 days later. I never worked nights again, and I moved out of that apartment not long after because what scared me most wasn't the costume or the knife. It was knowing that this had started long before that shift. And whatever he wanted, he had been watching me long enough to plan it. I booked the Airbnb because I was traveling with my boyfriend. And this happened about a year ago when we were both 29, during a time when we just needed a break from everything, nothing big or dramatic, just a simple weekend trip to another city to disconnect for a bit, sleep somewhere else, walk around, eat out, and then go back home. We chose that place very intentionally because it looked boring in the safest way possible. Clean, neutral, no personality, no weird details. The kind of apartment you book when you don't want charm or surprises. Just something predictable enough that you stop thinking about it the moment you click confirm. Everything about that listing was designed to make you trust it without question. The photos were clean and bright. The furniture looked new, the bed perfectly made. White sheets, neutral colors. Nothing personal, nothing strange. Just that minimalist look that makes you feel like nothing bad could possibly happen there. We arrived late in the evening. Not very late, but late enough that the streets were quiet, and most of the building lights were already off. And the building itself was old, but renovated, with fresh paint in the hallway and a keypad lock on the apartment door instead of keys, which actually made me feel better at the time because it felt modern and controlled, like no one could just walk in. We entered the apartment, and everything matched the photos exactly. Every detail, the smell, the layout, the furniture. Nothing was out of place. Nothing felt off. Nothing gave me that instinctive feeling that something was wrong. And that sense of normality actually felt reassuring. The first night passed without anything unusual at all. We slept through the night. No noises, no movement, no strange sounds, nothing. And if anything, that made me even more relaxed the second night because my guard was completely down by then. During the day, everything felt perfect, almost unreal, because we were walking around the city. I didn't know anyone there, but people were smiling, greeting us on the street, holding doors open. And for a while, it felt like one of those trips where everything just works and you start thinking you made the right choice coming here. At one point, we sat down at this small cafe. Outside, simple tables and chairs on the sidewalk, nothing special. And while we were sitting there talking, I suddenly got this uncomfortable feeling that someone was watching us. Just that quiet pressure in your chest that comes out of nowhere. I looked around and it didn't make sense. People were walking past, minding their own business, nobody staring, nobody acting strange. But the feeling didn't go away. It stayed there, steady, like eyes on my back, even when I wasn't looking at anyone. I told myself I was being paranoid and decided to ignore it. And by the time we got back to the apartment later that evening, I felt calm again, relaxed even, because being inside that place gave me this false sense of security. Like once the door was locked, nothing bad could reach us, like it was a fortress. The second night, I woke up around 2:30 in the morning, not suddenly and not because of a sound, just that half-awake moment when your body decides it needs water, and the room was dark and quiet. My boyfriend sleeping next to me, breathing slowly, everything feeling normal enough that I didn't even turn on a light when I got out of bed. I walked barefoot into the kitchen, still tired, still not fully awake, got myself a glass of water, and for a moment, everything felt normal enough that I almost went back to bed without thinking about it. On my way back toward the bedroom, I noticed the bathroom door. It was slightly open, and I stopped without really knowing why, because I was almost sure I had closed it before going to bed, not as a conscious decision, just out of habit. I stood there for a few seconds, telling myself I was probably wrong, that maybe my boyfriend had used it and I just didn't remember, and I started walking again, trying not to overthink it. But then I noticed the closet door in the hallway. It was open too. Not wide open, not enough to jump out at you, just open enough that you'd only notice it if you were paying attention. And what made my heart start beating faster was that it was a sliding door, the kind that always makes a sound when you move it, that soft scraping noise you can't really avoid. I stood there for a second longer, then forced myself to keep moving, and I stepped into the bedroom, already feeling uneasy. And just as I was about to turn around and close the door behind me, I heard it. A soft click, very quiet, the kind of sound you almost miss if you aren't listening for it, like someone pressing something gently, trying not to be heard. It came from the hallway. My body went cold all at once. I didn't even think about screaming, because that would only draw attention if someone really was in the apartment. In my head, there was only one thought: stay quiet and see what happens. I whispered my boyfriend's name, barely moving my lips, and when he didn't wake up, I heard something else. A faint creak. Not loud, just the quiet sound of something shifting its weight, followed by a single careful step, slow and controlled, like whoever was there was trying very hard not to be heard. That was enough to tell me I wasn't imagining things. I closed the door slowly, as carefully as I could, making sure it didn't click or scrape, and locked it. My hands shaking so badly, I had to check the lock twice just to be sure. I stayed right there by the door, my back pressed against it, barely breathing. And that's when I heard something that made my stomach turn. Breathing, coming from the other side of the door. Not rushed, not panicked, just steady, calm breathing, close enough that I knew someone was standing there. Listening, waiting, not trying to get in yet, just being there. I don't know how long I stood like that, but eventually I forced myself to move, crossed the room quietly, sat on the edge of the bed, and gently woke my boyfriend, whispering his name and telling him exactly what I had heard. Every sound, every detail, my voice shaking even though I was trying to stay calm. He woke up confused and half asleep, stopped for a moment and listened, but by then there was nothing. No sound at all. And when he looked at me, his expression made it clear he thought I was imagining things, like I'd scared myself for no reason. Then he walked to the door, unlocked it, opened it slowly, and the hallway was completely empty. No one there, no sound, no movement. He told me I was probably paranoid, that I had scared myself, that my mind was playing tricks on me. And I wanted to believe him so badly that I nodded, even though my body was still tense and my heart wouldn't slow down. Eventually, we fell asleep. I don't know how much time passed before I woke up again, but I woke up with that same feeling from earlier, that heavy sense that someone was watching me. And before I could even move or fully understand why my body was panicking, I saw him. Somebody. Sitting right next to the bed, right next to me. My mind went blank, like my brain just stopped working. And the next thing I knew, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, completely out of control. The silhouette moved fast, straight down the hallway. My boyfriend jumped up and chased after it down the hallway, while I stayed behind crying, barely able to move. And by the time he reached the front door, whoever it was already gone. When everything went quiet again, we realized our money was missing. And that's the part that still doesn't make sense to me. Because if all he wanted was money, he could have taken it earlier. He could have left the first time. Instead, he stayed long enough to come into the bedroom, long enough to stand there and watch us sleep. We called the police. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, nothing damaged. They said the most likely explanation was that someone else still had access to the apartment. Another key or code, maybe a previous guest who was never properly locked out. We left immediately, reported the place, and from that moment on, we stopped using Airbnb altogether. Money can be replaced, but I still don't know what he really wanted from us, or why he didn't leave when he had the chance. And that's the part that still scares me the most. This happened when I was 26, during a time when my sister trusted me enough to leave her kids with me for the weekend, something I had done many times before without ever thinking twice about it, because nothing strange had ever happened in that house before, and because Michael and Sarah were good kids who never caused trouble. Michael was 7 loud, curious, always moving, always asking questions, and Sarah was 10, quieter, more observant, and I had spent enough time with them to know when they were bored or tired and when they were being secretive. That afternoon started completely normal. Cartoons on the TV, snacks on the table, the usual noise of kids running up and down the stairs. And I remember thinking it was going to be an easy weekend. Nothing stressful or out of the ordinary. Sometime in the early evening, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, there was another girl standing there, around Sarah's age with her mother behind her. And before I could even ask what was going on, the woman explained that the girls had planned a sleepover and that it was already agreed between them. And she spoke calmly, like this was something that had already been decided. The mother smiled, but something about her made me uncomfortable, not in a dramatic way. Just that tight feeling in my stomach, and I didn't know how to explain it, only that her eyes felt off, and the whole thing gave me a bad feeling. She kept one hand on her daughter's shoulder the entire time, squeezing slightly when the girl shifted, and when she said it wouldn't be any trouble, that her daughter was well behaved. It didn't feel like reassurance, it felt like instruction. I hesitated, but I agreed, because technically there was no reason to say no. And the kids were already excited. The woman didn't stay long, didn't come inside, didn't chat, just left after reminding her daughter to behave. And the way she said it made the girl nod seriously, like they had an understanding I wasn't part of. As the evening went on, the house slowly got quieter. Not because the kids were asleep, but because the sounds changed. Less laughing, less running, more silence between noises. And after a while, I realized I hadn't heard Michael in a long time, which was unusual for him. That's when I went upstairs to check on them. When I opened the bedroom door, all 3 kids were sitting on the floor in a circle, and in the middle of them was a Ouija board. I stopped in the doorway. None of them looked up. Their fingers were resting lightly on the planchette, and what immediately bothered me wasn't the board itself, but how still and focused they were, like they weren't playing a game, but waiting for something. The planchette was moving slowly, and none of the kids were reading anything out loud. I stood there listening for a few seconds, telling myself it was just kids messing around because I don't believe in that kind of stuff. But the longer I watched, the more uncomfortable I got, because the movement didn't look random, it looked intentional. I stepped forward and told them to stop, picked the board up, and the moment I did, the girl looked up at me and said calmly that I shouldn't have interrupted in the middle. I asked her what she meant, and she said that now it wouldn't know where to go. The way she said it didn't sound playful or annoyed, it sounded factual. I told them all to get into bed, turned off the light, and closed the door. But as I walked away, the hallway felt heavier than before, like the air itself had changed. Okay, now, to understand what happened next, I need to explain how the living room and the kitchen were set up, because that detail matters. The couch was positioned with its back toward the kitchen. The kitchen itself was only partially open, not fully visible from the living room, because a wall blocked the view beyond the entrance. So if you were sitting on the couch, you couldn't actually see into the kitchen at all, only the dark opening where it began, while everything behind that wall remained completely out of sight. So when I went downstairs, I tried to distract myself by scrolling on my phone and turning the TV on low, telling myself I was just tired and overthinking things, but after a while, I suddenly jumped because I heard something that didn't belong there. At first, I tried to convince myself it came from the TV, some background noise or voices overlapping, but I knew immediately that wasn't true because the sound was coming from behind me, from the kitchen. It was a strange whisper, not loud enough to understand words, but close enough to feel intentional. I didn't know what to do. I honestly wasn't even sure if what I was hearing was real. I kept going back and forth in my head, wondering if I should sit on the couch with my back to the kitchen or stand up and face it. And that hesitation alone made everything feel worse. I felt stupid, confused, like my brain couldn't decide what was safer. After a moment passed and I couldn't hear anything anymore, I convinced myself that my mind was just playing tricks on me, that I was tired and overreacting. So I looked back down at my phone, and that was the exact moment everything changed, because right after that, I heard another sound. Clearer this time, coming straight from the dark kitchen behind me. Slow, metallic dragging sound, like someone gently pulling a knife across the counter. And the second I realized what it reminded me of, my body went tense. I stood up right away, arguing with myself in my head, telling myself not to be stupid, not to panic, but at the same time knowing that whatever that sound was, it wasn't normal. I reached for the light switch from where I was standing, my heart racing, and turned the kitchen light on. The light came on, and everything looked exactly the same. The counters were clean, nothing moved, nothing out of place, and somehow that made it even worse. That's when my chest tightened and the fear stopped being abstract and turned physical, like there was no air in my lungs anymore. And I didn't wait to hear anything else. I stood there for half a second longer, then turned and went upstairs fast, not running but not walking normally either. My steps too quick and too loud, and I didn't turn any lights off behind me. The living room lights stayed on. The lights on the stairs stayed on. And when I reached the bathroom, I turned that light on too and locked the door. I stood there under the harsh light, listening, trying to understand if what I'd heard was real, or if my mind was starting to slip, because even with all the lights on, I didn't feel any safer at all. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. I checked on the kids. Michael was asleep, Sarah was turned toward the wall, and the girl, I think, was also sleeping. Then I went into the bedroom and lay down fully dressed with the light on, afraid that turning it off would be some kind of signal. And I stayed awake, listening to every sound the house made. I could hear the normal things at first, the ticking, the pipes, the distant hum of the house settling. And I kept telling myself that if something was really wrong, I would hear it clearly. I don't know how much time passed like that, but at some point, the house stopped sounding normal, like the background noise had thinned out, and that's when I realized I was holding my breath without meaning to, staring at the door, waiting for something I didn't want to hear. Sometime after that, I heard whispering through the door. It was calm, steady, and it said that I shouldn't have interrupted them halfway. I was terrified. I had never felt anything like that before. All I could think about were the kids and whether there was really someone or something in the house. I've been scared before, but this was different. I forced myself to get up and go to their room. I woke them up and brought them into the big bedroom with me. The whole time I had this strange feeling that the girl wasn't actually asleep, like she was just lying there with her eyes closed. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a really weird feeling. I didn't sleep at all that night, but at least I felt calmer knowing we were all in the same room. After that, nothing else happened. No more sounds, no movement, no footsteps, no whispers, nothing at all. And that silence was somehow worse because I had no idea what to expect next. I stayed exactly where I was until morning, fully awake, light on, body tense, jumping at every normal sound the house made, too scared to move and too scared not to listen. When the sun finally came up, the house looked normal again, like nothing had happened. And that made me feel sick because I knew how real it had felt in the dark. When the girl's mother didn't come to pick her up, I drove her home myself. And when the door opened, it wasn't her mother standing there, but an older woman who introduced herself as her grandmother. There was something about her eyes that made my stomach drop, because they were the same kind of eyes her mother had. That same unpleasant sideways look that made you feel uncomfortable without knowing why. She didn't ask if everything was okay, didn't ask how the night went. She just took the girl by the hand, led her inside, and closed the door in front of me without another word. After that, I told my sister everything that had happened that night, from the board to the sounds to the voice I heard through the door, and she listened, but not in the way I expected. Not shocked, not panicked, more quiet and dismissive, like she didn't fully believe it or didn't want to. She told me the kids were not allowed to invite that girl over anymore without parent supervision. And after that, she said something that made my heart sink. There had never been a Ouija board in that house. Not now, not ever. So we had no idea where it came from. I kept going over it in my head. Either my nephews took it from somewhere without my sister or her husband knowing, or my sister was lying to me, or the other girl brought it with her that night. And that really bothered me. Something definitely happened that night. I don't know if it was that strange little girl or something else entirely, but I never went back there alone again. I never watched Michael and Sarah at that house after that. From then on, she always brought them to my place instead. And I still don't know if what I heard that night came from the girl or from something the board had already opened. But I do know one thing for sure. Whatever was in that house felt patient, like it had all the time in the world, like it was waiting for something. This happened about 6 or 7 years ago, during the winter, when I was living in a small town and working overnight shifts at a Walmart. I took the job because it paid better, and because everyone kept saying night shift was easy. No customers, just walking around, restocking shelves, and waiting for morning. Normally, there were other people in the store during the first part of the night. The stocking crews worked until around 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes a little later if there was more to do. And only after that would the store really empty out. Once they left, if there was nothing urgent, I was the only one left inside, just monitoring the cameras, responding to alerts, and doing occasional rounds. When I first started, I wasn't alone at all. For the first few nights, I worked alongside another guy who showed me the routine. I remember asking him why the person before me had quit, and he just said it was for personal reasons, that the guy was older and didn't want to work nights anymore. At the time, that sounded normal, so I didn't question it. We worked on a rotation, 3 nights for me, 3 nights for him. And during those first 3 nights, while the crews were still around and I wasn't alone yet, I actually felt really good. We talked, walked the store together, did the rounds, joked a bit, and the place didn't feel threatening at all. It felt calm, almost boring. When my turn came to work alone after the crews went home, I still felt okay, but it was different. Being one person inside a huge store after 2 in the morning does something to your head. The noise disappears all at once, and the space suddenly feels much bigger. Still, the first few solo shifts were calm. Nothing happened. It was just routine, walking long aisles, hearing my own footsteps echo, answering the radio when it crackled, and killing time until sunrise. The first thing that really bothered me happened during my third 3-night stretch, after the last crew had already left and I knew I was completely alone. I got a motion alert from an aisle I had walked through less than a minute earlier. By the time I went back, the alert had stopped. The aisle was empty, fully lit, nothing moved, nothing out of place. I stood there longer than I needed to, telling myself it was nothing, even though my body didn't feel relaxed at all. I went back to the small room with the monitors and checked the cameras. The store looked completely empty. I decided to sit for a bit and then do another round. About 10 minutes later, I got another motion alert, this time from a different part of the store, again in an area I knew no one should be in. I checked the cameras first. Nothing. I walked over there myself. Still nothing. At that point, I honestly thought the sensors were just acting up. That explanation felt safe. I sent an email to the manager saying the sensors might be glitching and assumed they'd look into it the next day. The rest of the shift passed quietly, and I went home calm. The next night, the first thing I did when I came in was check my email. The manager had replied saying they checked the sensors and everything was working fine. No issues at all. That's when the calm feeling disappeared, because if the sensors were fine, then something had to be triggering them, and that meant there was a real chance I wasn't actually alone in the store. I didn't want to do my rounds after that, but it was my job, so I did. While walking down one of the aisles, long after the crews had gone home and the store was completely empty, I heard footsteps. Slow ones. And the second I stopped walking, they stopped too. When I turned the corner, there was no one there. By this point, I was seriously worried that either there really was someone else inside the store with me, or that I was slowly losing it and hearing things that weren't there. And honestly, neither option felt okay. I finished that shift, sitting in the small cubicle by the monitors without doing any more full rounds, but just watching the screens non-stop, waiting to see a person, waiting for some kind of explanation for what I had been hearing. But nothing ever showed up. The next night was the one that really did it for me, even though at the time I didn't fully understand why yet, and it's the night I think about the most now. The shift started the same way all the others did. Quiet, cold outside, the store half lit the way it always is at night, with only certain aisles fully on and others dimmed. And I remember walking the floor telling myself this would be a normal shift, that nothing would happen, that I wouldn't hear anything strange. About an hour in, I noticed an empty food package on the floor in an aisle that hadn't been stocked in days, and I knew for a fact it hadn't been there during my last shift, and that bothered me more than it probably should have. Almost right after that, I got a motion alert, but it was from a part of the store far away from where I was standing. And then another one, and then another, each one from a different location, spaced out just enough that there was no way I could reach them in time. Every time I went to check, there was nothing there. No sound, no movement, no explanation, just the feeling that I was always arriving too late, like whatever was moving knew exactly when to stop. At one point, I stopped reacting and just stood still, listening, and that's when I heard movement far down an aisle I wasn't even near. Fast footsteps, confident, like whoever it was knew the store and didn't care if I heard them anymore. This time, I didn't follow. I told myself I wasn't risking my life for a paycheck, and I went into the break room instead. And that's when I noticed the chair pulled slightly away from the table. Like someone had just stood up, and I remember standing there, staring at that chair way longer than I should have, because I knew I had been the only one left in the store for hours. I didn't hear anything else for the rest of that shift. I wasn't relaxed, not even close, but nothing else happened. And when morning finally came, the relief I felt wasn't normal tired relief. It was the kind you feel when you leave a place that never felt right the entire time. I had 3 days off after that, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went back and forth in my head until I finally decided it wasn't worth it. No job is worth feeling like that all night, and I started thinking about quitting. Still, I went back one more time, but this time I came prepared. Pepper spray in my pocket, my phone in my hand, telling myself I would call the manager the second anything felt wrong. Everything was fine that night, right up until I went to use the bathroom. The door was locked. I hadn't locked it. And that door can only be locked from the inside. After that, I stopped walking normally and started listening to everything, every sound making my stomach tighten, every alert making my heart jump. The moment everything broke was later that same night, when I got another alert from the back of the store near receiving, and as I was walking toward it, I heard movement in front of me, and when I looked up, I saw a man standing between the shelves. Just standing there, staring straight at me. The second our eyes met, he ran straight toward me. I didn't think I just turned and ran. My heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, my feet slipping as I cut through aisles, knocking things over, not knowing if he was alone or if there were more of them. I ran without looking back, not trying to be quiet anymore, not caring if he heard me, because I already knew he was close enough that I could hear his footsteps behind mine, heavy and fast, matching my speed. And that thought alone made my legs feel weak. I reached the back of the store where the emergency exit was, and my hands were shaking so badly I fumbled with the handle for a second before I managed to push it open. And the moment the cold air hit my face, I ran outside without stopping, without turning around, without checking if he was still behind me. I kept running across the loading area, past parked trucks and dumpsters, my boots hitting the concrete too loud, my breath coming out in short, panicked gasps. And I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the lot, and my legs finally gave out, and I had to bend over, hands on my knees, trying not to throw up. That's when I called the police. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. My voice didn't sound like my own. And I remembered telling the dispatcher that there was someone inside the store, that he chased me, that I ran out the back. And even as I was saying it, I was scared they wouldn't believe me. The police arrived quickly, faster than I expected. And by the time they pulled up, I was sitting on the curb, still breathing too fast, staring at the dark back wall of the building like I expected him to come out at any second. They went inside immediately. They searched the store, front to back, aisles, restrooms, break room, storage, receiving, everywhere someone could hide, and I stood outside with one of the officers, trying to explain what I saw, what I heard, how close he was, how real it felt. After a while, they came back out, and they told me they didn't find anyone. Nothing looked disturbed except a few items knocked over, things that could have happened at any time. The manager showed up, and we went through the cameras together. They watched the footage slowly, rewinding, pausing, checking blind spots. And according to the video, nothing happened. No man standing between the shelves, no one running, no one chasing me. Just me, running through the store alone. That was the worst part, because I know someone was there. I didn't imagine it. It wasn't stress or fear or my mind playing tricks on me. It was a real person, 100%, and I had no proof. Either he knew exactly where the cameras couldn't see, exactly when to move and when to stop, or whatever chased me wasn't something the cameras picked up at all. They asked me if I was sure if I could have imagined it, if I was tired, stressed, overwhelmed, paranoid. And I didn't know how to explain that this wasn't a shadow or a noise or a feeling. This was a person, close enough that I could hear him breathing when he ran. I never went back inside that store. I quit that job the same day, and I never worked nights again. I also keep thinking about the guy who worked there before me, the one whose position I took, and how suddenly he quit. At the time, everyone said it was just personal reasons, that he was older and tired of night shifts. But after what happened to me, I can't stop wondering if he saw something too, or if he realized something I didn't and got out before it got worse. I still don't understand what happened with the cameras, or how any of that was even possible. But I know it will follow me for the rest of my life, because ever since that night, I constantly check behind me, no matter where I am.